Okay, so far, all of you have had the opportunity to share a little bit about why you're here. And so I want to we've got about 8 minutes till our break. So I wanted to share a little bit about my background. I think most of you know I teach energy healing, but the reason why I'm so passionate about this topic, psychic self-defense, is because I've had a lot of experience in this category or in this topic, and I like to jokingly say, unfortunately, I have a lot of experience in this area, so that's why I know a lot about it. There's a lot of different reasons why you would need self-defense. And so actually I have experience in all of those. So for one, I'm an empath, and an empath is someone who tends to be a sponge, tends to absorb physical things in the environment and emotional things in the environment from people. And I absorb all of that. 20 years ago, for me, it was really hard for me to even go to the grocery store without feeling extremely ill. And I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. But what I came to understand 20 years ago, I read a book by Judith Orloff called Positive Energy. And she talks about what it is to be an empath. And that was the first time that I had heard about anything like that. And that helped me understand that part of why I wasn't feeling well physically and emotionally was that I was picking up on so much stuff. And I didn't know anything about protecting my energy or doing anything to make it so I wasn't such a sponge. And just over the years, I learned a lot of techniques. I had to just find them because I didn't really have a mentor, an empath mentor or a self-defense mentor. So I just read a lot of books. I did go to different classes where they would mention different techniques for protecting your energy. And so I always absorbed all of that and then found the techniques that worked for me. So even if you're not an empath, though, you can still be affected if there's negative energy in your environment, if it's like a toxic workplace or a toxic home, things like that. And then I also have had a few experiences with psychic attack. And psychic attack is when someone intentionally or unintentionally sends you negative vibes. So if it's unintentional, then it would usually be like someone's angry or upset with you, and they're ruminating about it and stewing about it and maybe talking to their friend about you, and they're like, I'm so mad, blah, blah, blah. And they're sending all of this emotional energy, which are like little energy daggers coming and weakening your aura. That's unintentional. Intentional would be someone who actually knows how to work with energy, how to manipulate energy, and they on purpose send thought forms or emotions, or they take it even further and they do like black magic. They cast a spell or do a curse or a hex, depending on their spiritual tradition, or they do some kind of a ritual action in order to bring harm to you. So I'm a nice person, so I haven't had like a million people do that to me, but for many years I've been in a leadership position. I've been in a visible position, and anytime you're in that kind of mode, then being so visible, then there are people who come out of the woodwork who you can be more of a target. It's just something to be aware of. And so I had a situation about 10 years ago. This was when I was teaching a couple of belly dance classes, and there was a gal and a couple of her friends in one of my classes, and they were, and I say this compassionately, this is not from judgment or anything like that, but they were just very high drama women. They were always fighting with each other, and some days they weren't speaking to each other, and but they were best friends, and it was just a lot of drama. Not really how I roll. And one of the gals was helping me with some behind the scenes aspects of my class. She was helping me with my website. She had volunteered to do it. She insisted, please let me help you. Well, anyway, then one day she decided that she didn't like what our arrangement was. I was paying her, but she decided she didn't like that arrangement. And so she did both. She took energetic action and physical action. So physical action was that she removed my website from the internet and posted a weird message. And then she sent me an email and said that she was basically holding my website for ransom. She said I had to pay her thousands of dollars in order to get it back. And then I know that she did some black magic. I believe that she did. I didn't make that assumption. I just want to say I didn't immediately jump to that assumption. But that night, I woke up. I was asleep, but I woke up and I looked at the clock and it was midnight. So I knew what time it was. And I saw an image of her at the foot of my bed. And I was like, uh-oh, I think she's visiting me. Well, I also knew, because I knew her, that she was a practitioner of magic. There's nothing essentially wrong with magic. It's like you look at any people out in the world, different religions. There's some people who give a religion a bad name and some people who give it a good name. And so she was doing some dark stuff. And so over the course of the next few weeks, I had all of our electronic equipment broke. My boyfriend at the time, his computer broke. My assistant, her computer broke. Every single one of our automobiles broke down. And whenever I would walk into my house, I saw all this red energy everywhere. It was like someone was really angry. And so then after 2 weeks, I finally admitted, because I didn't want to think that about someone, that they would do that. But I finally admitted, okay, I think someone did some a curse, or I don't know what it was, black magic or something, based on what I was seeing. And so in that situation, what really snapped things back to normal was that I realized that she had control, and that it was because I was afraid. And so I was like, I'm not going to be afraid anymore. Now, this doesn't always work. It didn't work for another situation I had. But in this situation, it was just a person trying to mess with me, being a bully. And so I basically was like, talk to the hand. Don't mess with me. I don't have time for you. You're just stupid, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whatever. And I cleared my house, I burned sage, and I brought in white light, and that cleared it. So that was actually a pretty mild psychic attack as far as psychic attacks go, because it was real easy to clear. There are ones that are milder, where you might just get a bad feeling. So this was maybe mild to moderate. I say that it was more mild because it was real easy to clear. And then, so actually out in the community, I do tend to avoid that person, because it's I'm not going to, I don't wish her any ill will, but I'm not going to go up and say, oh, let me hug you, and, or whatever, and, pick up on whatever it is that negative energies that she's working with. So, I would consider her to be someone who is not really aligned with integrity, someone who does stuff like that on purpose. Again, that's not a judgment. It's just my discernment about that. So that was one situation. And another situation of psychic attack involved, actually, some of you have known me for a while. I did have a situation a couple of months ago it's a pretty detailed story, so I won't get into all of it, but I will say that the simple version of the story is that I went to a local healer in town. I don't ever give identifying information in this kind of format because that's not what it's about. But I went to a healer for a group class, and seeing her as a colleague, I thought, oh, this looks like a neat class. So I went to it, not suspecting anything, and right afterwards, I started having more drama. There was more drama. There was just things started to get really stirred up in my life, and it was very odd because usually there's very little drama in my life these days. It's very nice, and I remember noticing something is kind of off. What is going on? And then I'm still thinking that this person is fine and a good person that I should be going to. So I went to another. It was a group healing session a couple weeks after that, and that was different than the first class. The first class was just information. The second class was everyone in the room was infused with this energy that she works with, and so I did feel a lot of energy. I then went home, and starting that night, I started to have a lot more psychic activity, but it wasn't good stuff. I started to see dark stuff. And 2 nights later, when we had the full moon, all of a sudden there were all these demonic attacks. I could see them jump onto my back, and then I had all this horrible neck and back pain. That's not something that's not an issue. I don't normally have an issue with demons attacking me, by the way. So that was very unusual. And I was trying to figure out where that was coming from. I obviously didn't work on any clients during that time. And it was a very stressful couple of weeks. And then I finally put the pieces together and realized that I started to have these issues in direct connection with being connected with this person. And when I started to figure that out, I did warn someone about it. And that someone is actually a very strong follower of that teacher. I was worried about her. And that night, I was attacked really violently. And it was very terrifying. And that experience a couple months ago is what has really obviously I recovered from that, and everything is very clear now. The energy is clear, but that recent situation is what has really fired me up even more to really help people with this, because what I found was that everybody that I asked who I thought would have information to help me, because I was doing sage and white light and all these basic all these techniques that everyone assumes that's what you do, and none of that was working. And this particular scenario was a severe attack, multiple. It wasn't just emotional, but it was entities, and they wouldn't go away. I mean, it was really emotionally, it was obviously very terrifying and difficult, but what made it twice as bad and stressful was that it seemed that there was no one who had the answers. No one could tell me what to do. The people who I thought, I would contact people and say, what should I do? This is happening. The people who I thought were experts, and they would say, burn sage. I'd be like, okay, no offense, but they don't know how to deal with a really severe attack. And that was one big thing that we discovered, was that, we always assumed that sage worked for everything. Didn't work. I actually went through all of that with a couple of friends of mine. So that we talked almost every day and helped keep each other sane, because it was really horrible. So that has renewed my desire to help people with this. One of the things that I found was not only did people not have the information that I needed, and I didn't find barely any books that had any information either. But a lot of people were unsupportive, or they just didn't understand. And there was no support group. Like I even tried, I was raised Catholic. I'm not Catholic anymore, but I tried contacting the Catholic Church, and they were like, they didn't want to have anything to do with me. I was very stressed out. I mean, I couldn't find anyone that could help me, and people who investigate ghosts and healers who've been working in the field for many, many, many years. They all just said, visualize white light and use sage. And that doesn't work. I'm just going to tell you. It works for the easy stuff. Does not work for something really severe. So we're going to be learning about some of the stuff that works with the really severe situations. Because my friends and I, we did a whole lot of research. We worked on it every single day. And we found some things that really work for the really hard stuff. So we're actually going to do some of it today. And so by the time you leave here, you will have had, I'm just going to say, this is funny. It's true, but it's funny. The level of clearing that you're going to receive today is like exorcism level, okay? So like, even if you have really dark stuff with you, it's going to be released, okay? And I'll give you the information that you need to know so you can continue to do that work. One of the people that we did, my friends and I connected with, who gave us some tidbits of valuable wisdom, she said that it's like when you're getting rid of, she said it's like when you're getting rid of bed bugs or fleas in your house, and you have to keep, and we don't have fleas in here, don't worry, but you have to keep treating, you have to keep washing everything, you have to keep treating, because it'll come back if you don't. So people think you just burn sage once and then you're fine, do it once a week. But if you have a really nasty issue, then you have to do it often. So the tools that we'll learn today, if you're having issues, then I suggest that you do continue to do a daily practice for like at least 30 days. Yeah. And then that way those fleas won't come back. Those cooties. Yeah. So I talked a little bit about my stories. I had a recent story, so I talked about being an empath, and then also about some psychic attacks, people who intentionally sent, or the one situation was someone intentionally sent some stuff. The recent situation, I have no idea if that was intentional or not, or if just something was attached to that healer and she doesn't know it. So I do pray for her every day, and so there's intentional and unintentional. And then I've also had situations with ghosts. So I accidentally, it was about 20 years ago, I moved into a house that was haunted. Lots of houses have spirits in them, but this was an old farmhouse, and there were like hundreds of ghosts in this house. And one of them was very malevolent, very evil. And it's just my opinion that it was holding all of those other spirits there. Well, I should have checked before I moved in, but I didn't even think about that. And it was the first night that I slept there. I remember I laid my head back on my pillow, and as my mind started to empty, all of a sudden I heard what sounded like hundreds of whispers. And I went, oh, crap, this place is haunted. Why did I? And it was just a temporary living situation. I was renting a room from an elderly lady for 6 months while I was preparing to move away. But I thought, oh man. And I actually visibly saw a couple of the ghosts. So I heard those hundreds of whispers. And then 2 ghosts I saw a woman, who had like real kinky dirty blonde hair, and she was holding an infant. And then I saw another woman who was fairly short and petite, and she had long brown hair. And they were both wearing old-fashioned clothing, and they were harmless. They weren't doing anything bad to me. But there was something else there that was just this black. It was just this, it didn't even look human. I think it used to be human, but it was just this black energy. And I heard it say my name one time when I was alone in the room, and I saw it on more than one occasion. And when I lived there, within a couple of weeks, I became very ill, became very sick. And actually, in that situation, I'm just going to tell this story because these things do happen to people, and people are usually it's so weird that they don't ever share it with anyone. So I'm going to share this with you so that in case you've had it happen or you meet someone, then you'll know that it does happen. So in that situation, it was the middle of the night, and I'm not going to hold anything back. So I woke up in the middle of the night because I was having an orgasm. And which is not something that happens to me every night, right? So that I woke up because my body was having this reaction. And when I opened my eyes, that black thing that I had seen before, it was actually over me. So it was messing with me, and I couldn't move. And that actually, there are a lot of stories of that happening to people. And within the next 2 days, I came down with a horrible urinary tract infection. And then I ended up having chronic candida infection in my intestines. And it became systemic, and I got very, very ill. I thought I was going to die from it because I couldn't eat anything. And at that time, I tried going to a healer about 6 months later, and I told him what had happened. And I said, I think this is why I'm sick. And he shook his head. He said, it doesn't work that way. He was very condescending, actually. And now, years later, this was 20 years ago, I'm thinking, if only I had found someone who really understood and knew about these things, because it took me years to recover from that, actually. I mean, that entity didn't follow me. When I moved, it stayed in the house, but I still had the physical effects, and it took me a few years to heal myself from that. So I share these stories so that you know that the information that I share with you today is not just from me reading a couple of books or going to a workshop that someone else taught. I do always read books as well, and I go to workshops, but the stuff that I know is based on personal experience, and also having to figure things out when I had no one to help me and figure out how to get rid of stuff, how to heal from stuff that happened. So, crazy stuff. Okay, now we're going to shut off the recording.